Words can break bones. Some pages can stop hearts. We are taught that books are safe, passive objects, ink on paper. But throughout history, there have been texts so volatile that possessing them was a definitive death sentence, not because they were lies, but because they were dangerous truths. These books weren't banned to protect the public from heresy or immorality. They were burned to protect the architects of control from the people they rule. We are investigating the manuscript that drove its translators to absolute madness. The black magic grimoire locked in the Vatican's deepest vault that remains classified as a weapon. And the forbidden code that doesn't just describe the physical world, but actively hacks it. Listen closely. But whatever you do, do not write these names down. The suppression of knowledge is the oldest industry in the world. From the black smoke rising over the Library of Alexandria to the cold, climate-controlled vaults of the Vatican secret archives, the technology of silence has evolved, but the objective remains exactly the same: control. They tell us books are banned because they are immoral, heretical, or dangerous to the public order. That is a convenient cover story. When an empire burns a book, they aren't trying to save your soul. They are trying to save their power. They are trying to prevent a shift in the hierarchy. As we open these files today, do not look for the books that were simply controversial. Look for the anomalies. In every single case we are about to investigate, you will detect the same 3 red flags. A pattern of suppression that is statistically impossible to ignore. First, watch for the exit strategy. The authors of these texts almost never die in their beds. They vanish into thin air. They suffer sudden, inexplicable psychotic breaks, or they are executed shortly after the final page is written. The knowledge they carry is treated like a pathogen that must be contained. Second, identify the disinformation shield. The system consistently labels these books as cursed, magical, or occult. This is a psychological fence designed to keep rational minds away. If you believe a book is black magic, you won't treat it as science. You won't test its formulas in a lab. You'll just be afraid of it. It is the perfect defense mechanism for hidden technology. And third, the temporal glitch. The logic inside these pages often predates its era by centuries. We will see biological diagrams drawn before the invention of the microscope, physics equations solved before Isaac Newton was born, maps of coastlines that were buried under ice for 10,000 years. For centuries, fire was the only way to delete this information. But in the digital age, fire is too messy. It draws attention. Now, they use shadow banning. They use algorithmic suppression. They bury the truth under a mountain of noise and ridicule. But the containment field is failing. The internet has cracked the vault. These 10 books are no longer just whispers in a secret society. They are here. And the first one takes us back to the sand where the silence began. Story 1, the Book of Thoth. We begin where civilization began, Egypt, but we are not looking for the Book of the Dead. That text was a manual for dying. We are looking for the book that made living impossible. Legend says that Thoth, the god of wisdom, wrote 42 books containing all the knowledge of the universe. But there was one, a single specific text that he wrote with his own hand, the Book of Thoth. It was not written on papyrus. It was etched on plates of hammered gold, and it contained only 2 spells. Just 2. The first spell allowed the reader to understand the language of the sky, to speak with the birds, the snakes, and the deep ocean. It connected the reader's consciousness to the biological network of the planet. But the second spell was the weapon. The second spell allowed a human to see the gods face to face, not as statues, not as metaphors, but as they truly are. It allowed the reader to perceive the raw, unfiltered source code of reality, and that is why it was banned, because the human brain is not designed to run that software. The story goes that Prince Neferkaptah found the book at the bottom of the Nile, guarded by serpents. He read it, and the universe immediately corrected the error. The knowledge was too heavy. His wife went insane. His son died instantly. Neferkaptah, unable to bear the weight of absolute truth, took his own life. The pharaoh, terrified of the object, ordered it to be buried with the prince. He didn't want it destroyed. He wanted it quarantined. Generations later, Prince Setna, a son of Ramses the Great, broke into the tomb to steal it. He didn't face a physical guard. He faced the spirit of Neferkapta's wife, who warned him, "This is not a gift. It is a virus." Setna took it anyway, and within days, he began to hallucinate. He saw his own life unraveling, his reality dissolving into geometry and light. He realized that the book wasn't cursed by magic. It was cursed by physics. The human mind has a firewall. This book crashed it. Setna returned the book. He sealed the tomb. And Egyptian history went silent on the matter. They learned the first lesson of forbidden knowledge. There are some files you do not open because you cannot close them again. Egypt buried its secrets in the sand. But the next dangerous text wasn't buried. It was hidden in plain sight, locked behind a code that even the world's greatest supercomputers still cannot crack. Story 2. The Voynich Manuscript. We move from the sands of Egypt to a climate-controlled vault in Yale University's Beinecke Library. Here lies the Mount Everest of broken codes, a book that has defeated the greatest cryptographers of World War II, the NSA, and modern artificial intelligence. It is called the Voynich Manuscript. To the naked eye, it looks like a medieval medical journal. Carbon dating places it in the early 15th century. But open the cover, and you leave the known world behind. Its 240 pages are filled with handwriting that belongs to no known civilization. It loops, it flows, it has a rhythm, but it matches no alphabet ever recorded in human history. But the text isn't the most disturbing part. It's the illustrations. The book is filled with detailed biological and astronomical diagrams. But the plants do not exist on Earth. They have root systems that resemble human organs. They depict biological structures that require a microscope to see, technology that wouldn't be invented for another 200 years. The star chart showed galaxies in positions that were unknown to 15th century astronomy. Skeptics call it a hoax, a meaningless prank, but that theory was destroyed by modern computer analysis. When linguists applied Zipf's law, a statistical rule that governs every natural human language, the Voynich manuscript passed the test perfectly. It is not gibberish. It has syntax. It has grammar. It carries information. This leads to a terrifying conclusion. If it is a real language, and it describes a biology that doesn't exist here, then where was the author observing it from? Hidden within the text, researchers have found a recurring mathematical anomaly, a pattern some call the cipher of the fallen. It suggests that the author wasn't trying to hide information from us. They were transcribing a reality that sits right on top of ours, invisible to the naked eye, a reality where these plants grow and these stars align. The Voynich manuscript remains the only book in the world that we can hold, but cannot read. It is a locked door. But while the Voynich hides behind a wall of language, the next book on our list doesn't hide at all. It sits in the center of the religious world, waiting for someone foolish enough to sign its contract. Story 3. The Grand Grimoire, The Red Dragon, deep within the Vatican secret archives, in a section strictly off-limits to the public, rests a book written in 1520. It is often described as the most dangerous book in the occult world. It is called the Grand Grimoire, or the Red Dragon. Most ancient books of magic are collections of herbal remedies and superstitious nonsense. But the Vatican treats this text with a very specific, very real type of fear. Why? Because the Grand Grimoire isn't a prayer book. It is a legal manual. It contains a precise ritual to summon Lucifuge Rofakel, a high-ranking demon. But the terror lies in the details. The book details a loophole, a method to form a binding pact with this entity without immediately losing one's soul. It turns the eternal consequences of hell into a temporary business transaction. Think about the implication. The church teaches that dealing with the devil is instant damnation. Yet, they possess the one book that contradicts their entire theology, a book that claims you can cheat the system. And instead of burning it, they archive it. The Vatican claims they keep it for historical context, but you do not guard a lie with the Swiss guard. You guard a weapon. You guard a truth that is too dangerous to be released. If this book is fake, why is it still one of the most heavily guarded objects in Rome? It remains the ultimate paradox. The holiest city on earth is a guardian of the unholiest text ever written. They lock the door to keep it in. But in England, a queen's personal advisor left the window open, and what flew in was not a demon, but a voice from the stars. Story 4, The Book of Soyga. We leave the Vatican and travel to the court of Queen Elizabeth I. Here lived a man named John Dee. He was not a sorcerer. He was a mathematician, a navigator, and one of the most brilliant scientific minds of the 16th century. He possessed the largest library in England. But there was one book on his shelf that he could not read, the Book of Soyga. On the surface, it contains magic spells, but the final 36 pages are different. They contain 40,000 random letters arranged in massive, complex tables. Dee spent years trying to crack the code. He realized the patterns were too complex to be humanly constructed. Desperate, he hired a medium to summon the archangel Uriel to ask for the key. The angel's answer is chilling. Uriel confirmed the book was real, that it was given to Adam in the Garden of Eden. But when Dee asked how to read the tables, the angel refused. He said the knowledge contained within was not fit for human eyes. He said that whoever unlocks the code will die within 30 months. After Dee's death, the book vanished. For 400 years, historians thought it was a myth, until 1994, when it was found mislabeled in the British Library. It had been sitting there, gathering dust, hiding in the dark. Computers have since analyzed the 40,000 letters. They found that the tables are generated by an incredibly complex mathematical algorithm, one that wasn't discovered by modern mathematicians until the mid-20th century. How did a 16th century mystic possess a computer algorithm? The Book of Soyga remains unsolved. A digital file in an analog world. Angels speak in riddles, but the next author spoke in nightmares. Story 5, Excalibur. We move from the 16th century to post-war America. 1948, a time of paranoia, new religions, and the birth of the atomic age. In this chaotic era, a science fiction writer named L. Ron Hubbard wrote a manuscript that has become the dark Bible of modern occult lore. He didn't call it Dianetics. He called it Excalibur. Before he founded Scientology, Hubbard underwent a dental operation. He had a bad reaction to the anesthetic, and, according to his own account, his heart stopped. He was clinically dead for 8 minutes. During that time, he claimed to have received a download of absolute knowledge, the answers to the origin of the universe and the purpose of existence. When he woke up, he wrote frantically for 6 days and 6 nights. The result was a book that was never published. Not because publishers rejected it, but because, according to the legend, it was too lethal to print. Hubbard shared the manuscript with his closest circle. The first person who read it suffered a complete psychotic break and was institutionalized. The second and third readers committed suicide shortly after finishing the final chapter. The fourth walked out a window. What could possibly be in these pages? The theory is that Excalibur cracks the survival mechanism of the human brain. Our minds are designed to filter out the true scale of the universe so that we can function. We have a built-in fear of death to keep us alive. Excalibur supposedly removes that filter. It presents a truth so stark, so nihilistic, that the reader realizes their existence is meaningless. It deletes the fear of death, and a human without the fear of death self-destructs. Hubbard himself claimed that a Soviet spy offered him $100,000 for the manuscript, believing it could be used as a psychological weapon to demoralize the American population. Hubbard refused. He buried the text, claiming the world is not ready. Today, high-ranking Scientologists pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to reach OT levels that contain watered-down fragments of this knowledge. But the original, raw manuscript remains the holy grail of forbidden literature. It is the book that kills you simply by being understood. Madness is a defense mechanism. It protects the mind from what it cannot handle. But sometimes the danger isn't psychological. Sometimes it is purely violently physical. Story 6, The Anarchist Cookbook. We leave the realm of ancient curses and enter the era of modern terror. The year is 1971. America is burning with anti-war protests, civil rights movements, and a deep distrust of the government. In the middle of this chaos, a 19-year-old student named William Powell walked into a public library in New York. He wasn't looking for fiction. He was looking for military manuals. He compiled what he found into a text that became the most infamous do-it-yourself manual in history, The Anarchist Cookbook. Unlike the previous books on this list, there is no magic here. There are no demons. There are only chemical formulas. It provides detailed instructions on how to manufacture TNT, how to build silencers for firearms, how to hack telecommunications networks, and how to cook LSD. It turned the chemistry of war into a kitchen recipe. The FBI hated it. They investigated Powell immediately. But here's the irony. They couldn't ban it. The First Amendment protected the publication of information, even if that information could level a city block. So it stayed on the shelves. But the true horror of this book isn't what's inside it. It's who used it. For decades, copies of the Anarchist Cookbook have been found in the belongings of school shooters, domestic terrorists, and bombers. It became the textbook for the Columbine killers. It became the blueprint for the Oklahoma City bombing. It stopped being a symbol of protest and became a tool of slaughter. The story takes a tragic turn. William Powell didn't die mysteriously. He grew up. He converted to Anglicanism, became a teacher, and spent the rest of his life horrified by what he created as an angry teenager. He publicly demanded that the book be taken out of print. He wrote, "The book is a misguided product of my anger. It has no place in civilized society." But he learned a hard lesson. You cannot unring a bell. The publisher refused to stop printing it because it was too profitable. And even after the copyright expired, the internet took over. The PDF is everywhere. Powell died knowing that his teenage rebellion had become a permanent manual for murder. He proved that you don't need a demon to create hell on earth. You just need a printing press. That was low-tech rebellion, physical chemistry. But the next book takes us back to a time when magic was science, and the ingredients were far more gruesome than gunpowder. Story 7, The Picatrix Guide el-Hakim. We leave the basement of the anarchist and enter the observatory of the madman. We travel back to 11th century Spain, to a time when science, magic, and astronomy were the exact same thing. Here, we find a 400-page manuscript that became the secret obsession of the Renaissance elite. It is called the Picatrix, or in its original Arabic, Guide el-Hakim, the goal of the wise. But wise is a gentle word for what is inside. The Picatrix is arguably the most grotesque book ever written. Most grimoires are vague. They tell you to pray or focus your intent. The Picatrix does not do that. It treats magic as a hard science. It views the universe as a giant machine waiting to be hacked. The premise is simple. Energy flows down from the stars and planets. If you can catch that energy in a specific object at a specific time, you can bend reality. But the batteries required to catch this energy are horrific. The recipes in this book read like a crime scene report. To channel the energy of Saturn, you don't just chant a mantra. You must mix the brain of a black crow, the blood of a bat, and the urine of a donkey. It requires opium, hashish, and human blood. It is visceral. It is wet. It demands that the practitioner get their hands dirty with the raw biological material of death. The book was translated into Latin in 1256, and it immediately terrified the church, not just because it was satanic, but because it was godless. It didn't ask demons for favors. It didn't ask God for permission. It taught that a human being, armed with the right math and the right organic chemistry, could become a god themselves. It promised the power to build entire cities, using only the focused rays of the planets. This book influenced the greatest minds of the Renaissance. Marsilio Ficino, the man who translated Plato, was addicted to it. He believed it was the lost technology of the ancients. But he had to hide it. The Inquisition burned copies of the Picatrix wherever they found them. They realized that if people believed they could control their own fate through stellar engineering, the church would become obsolete. The Picatrix teaches us that the line between genius and insanity is drawn in blood. It turned the beautiful silence of the stars into a recipe for domination. From the chemistry of the stars, we descend to the biology of the devil. The Picatrix took a lifetime to write. The next book was allegedly written in a single night. Story 8, Codex Gigas, the Devil's Bible. We travel now to the National Library of Sweden to stand before a book that requires 2 people just a lift. It weighs 165 pounds. It is made from the skins of 160 donkeys. It is the Codex Gigas, better known as the Devil's Bible. The legend is famous. In the 13th century, a Benedictine monk in Bohemia broke his vows. To avoid being walled up alive, he promised to write a book containing all human knowledge in a single night. As midnight approached, he realized the task was impossible. So he didn't pray to God. He prayed to the fallen one. Skeptics dismissed this as a medieval fairy tale. But modern science has made the story terrifyingly plausible. Forensic handwriting analysts have studied the text. They expected to see changes in script, signs of aging tiredness, or a shift in style over the decades it would take to write such a tome. They found nothing. The handwriting is identical from the first page to the last. The flow of ink suggests the writer never took a break. Recreating this text today by hand would take 20 years of nonstop writing. The analysis suggests it was written in a single, continuous burst of energy. And then there is page 577, a massive, full-page illustration of the devil. It is the only Bible in history that gives Satan a portrait. But look closely at the opposite page, the heavenly city. Hidden in the geometry of the towers is a familiar pattern, the same mathematical cipher of the fallen found in the Voynich manuscript. A single night for a book, a single formula for a disaster. We have looked at magic, psychology, and war. But the next book ignores God entirely. Story 9, The Munich Manual of Demonic Magic. We have explored books that try to cheat the devil and books that try to become God. But our 9th entry does something even more disturbing. It ignores them both. Hidden in the Bavarian State Library under the innocuous code CLM 849 lies a manuscript from the 15th century. It is known as the Munich Manual of Demonic Magic. To understand why this text is so dangerous, you have to understand the standard operating procedure of medieval magic. Usually, a grimoire is filled with prayers. The wizard spends hours begging God, Jesus, and the archangels for protection before daring to whisper a demon's name. They build a spiritual cage to keep themselves safe. The Munich Manual does not do that. It contains almost no prayers. It mentions God only as a formality. It is written with a shocking atheistic arrogance. The author doesn't ask for permission. He issues commands. The text focuses almost exclusively on illusionist magic. It doesn't just want to find treasure. It wants to break the minds of your enemies. It provides specific recipes to make people see things that aren't there, to conjure phantom armies, to make a castle look like a cave, or to drive a victim insane with spectral noises. It is a handbook for psychological warfare. Scholars who have analyzed the Latin text note a terrifying similarity to the Grand Grimoire we discussed earlier. It uses the same command tone, a specific linguistic structure designed to dominate an entity rather than negotiate with it. This suggests that these books aren't isolated ramblings of mad monks. They are part of a shared, underground curriculum, a dark academia that has existed in Europe for centuries. But the Munich Manual is the most reckless. By removing the prayers and protections, it removes the safety rails. It assumes a human will is strong enough to enslave a demon without divine backup. It is the occult equivalent of handling plutonium without a hazmat suit. The book remains in the library today, available to scholars, but the most dangerous rituals have allegedly been left untranslated. We have looked at magic, psychology, war, and physics, but the final book connects them all. It is the oldest, it is the most controversial, and it claims to be the source code for every other book on this list. Story 10. The Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean. We have arrived at the final door, the 0 point. We have looked at books that summon demons, books that build bombs, and books that break the human mind. But this final text explains why all of that is possible. It is the most ancient, the most controversial, and the most dangerous document in human history. It is called the Emerald Tablets of Thoth the Atlantean. This is not a manuscript written on paper or vellum. Legend says these tablets are formed from a substance created through alchemical transmutation, an imperishable green crystal that cannot be broken, burned, or destroyed by any known acid. Its atomic structure is locked in place. It is a permanent file. Historians call it a myth. They say it's a metaphor, but there's a glitch in that theory. In the 17th century, the father of modern physics, Isaac Newton, spent more time studying alchemy than he did on gravity. When his private papers were sold at auction in 1936, the world was shocked to discover that Newton had personally translated the Emerald Tablet. He wasn't just reading it, he was obsessed with it. Why would the most rational scientific mind in history study a myth? Because Newton realized what this text actually is. It isn't magic, it is advanced physics. The text contains a famous axiom, as above, so below. For centuries, people thought this was a religious chant. It is not. It is a description of a holographic universe. It describes a reality where the structure of the atom, below, mimics the structure of the solar system, above. It suggests that if you can manipulate the code of the microscopic, you can change the macroscopic. This is the secret that connects every story we have told. The Book of Thoth used this principle to talk to animals. The Picatrix used it to harness starlight. The Book of Soiga used it to code the language of angels. They are all running on the operating system described in these tablets. The Emerald Tablets are considered the dangerous book, not because they curse you, but because they liberate you. They teach that humanity is not a creation, but a creator. They contain the instructions for escaping the simulation. The tablets themselves are currently missing. Some say they are buried beneath the Great Pyramid. Others say they were taken back to the Hall of Records. But the text survives. The code is out there. We have opened 10 files. We have looked into the abyss. And now, we must ask the final question. Part 5, the final chapter. We have opened 10 files. We have looked into the abyss of human curiosity and seen what stares back. From the sands of Egypt to the servers of the digital age, the pattern is undeniable. History is not a record of what happened. It is a curated list of what the survivors allowed to be remembered. The skeptical mind will dismiss these stories. It is easy to say that the Grand Grimoire is just superstition, that the Voynich manuscript is a meaningless prank, or that Excalibur is just a ghost story. That is the safe choice. That is the reaction the system designed you to have. If you believe these books are fake, you can sleep at night. You can believe that the world is stable, rational, and safe. But if you are still watching, you know that is a lie. You have to ask yourself one question. Why are the most powerful institutions in human history, the Vatican, the pharaonic dynasties, the FBI, and the greatest scientific minds, spend so much blood and treasure hunting these pages down? They didn't burn libraries to fight a fantasy. They didn't execute authors to suppress a fairy tale. They burned them to destroy a weapon. They are afraid because they know that reality is fragile. It is a construct held together by consensus. And a single book, written with the right words, in the right order, can break that consensus. It can crash the system. The books we discuss today are locked away. You cannot read them. But the danger hasn't passed. The knowledge they contain, the physics of the soul, the chemistry of the stars, the biology of the gods, is still out there waiting to be rediscovered. The most dangerous book in the world isn't the one locked in the Vatican. It is the one that hasn't been written yet. Or maybe it's the one you are writing right now.